episode 24, The Bullshit About Self-Organization.
You're listening to the very best podcast in the world on health, wealth, and happiness. Please remember to leave a review and share with all your friends and family. And here is your host, Lars Hilser.
Actually, no, here he is. Friends, welcome to the 24th. Is it the 24th? No idea. The 24th episode of the very best podcast in the world. This time, it's about health. And in a more precise way, mental health. And I have a peeve because my vocational trainer, if there is such a word, it's like a college professor, but in a company. I'll get into that in a little bit more detail later on. Thought that I was unorganized. And the only difference was that I was different from him. He was very Prussian. I was very chaotic. But only the genius rules the chaos. I think Einstein said something that or similar. So he gave me a book about self-organization. And in that book, it said something along the line of, if you haven't touched a piece of paper for an X amount of time, throw it away. And following this advice actually cost me a few thousand marks, Deutsch marks, back in the day. And I was so pissed off that I took gasoline, took the book, brought it in the backyard, and covered it in gasoline, threw a lighter in it, and said, "Fuck you, book." Now, what had happened? One of the pieces of paper that I hadn't touched for X amount of time, I forget what it was, I can't obviously take the book for reference because I burned it, was that one sheet of paper that I had shredded and tossed based on the advice, which I had to present a few months later to an organization which was questioning that I had justifiably received a kind of bonus. And so this piece of paper being gone, I couldn't prove it. I had to pay back the money, burn the book. The rest is history. Now, why is self-organization bullshit? Well, it is not. So in that way, the title may be a little bit misleading. However, pot and the lid are not always compatible. And the point you have to understand, is that all of most of these acclaimed self-help books trying to teach you self-organization will not fit. It's a tailor-made thing that you have to figure out for yourself. So don't take one of these books, even though they're on the New York Times bestseller list. This one was on a bestseller list for weeks in Germany, for weeks and months, and I think even years, and I ended up burning the motherfucker in the yard, dancing around it because it had cost me so much money, because I followed what it said by the word. Now, shame on me. I was in my early 20s, I think. Fool me once, that ordeal. Never going to happen again. I'm never going to take one of these self-help books again, because self-help, the only person who can help you is yourself. That's actually what self-help should mean. Now, one of the main inhibitors of people's development is that they're supposed to, like a scale to organize their life. And while a minority of the population, this might be accurate, a lot of people have found their way, and it's just different. The same was true for the example that I just mentioned. My desk looked like a fucking pigsty, but I was organized. I knew where every document was. I knew where every email was. Now, this dude was older, so we printed out emails. I shit you not. Coming in, yeah, this was like 2 decades ago. Shit, I'm getting old. But I had a different way of organizing myself, which at first glance, and I have to admit this even, at first glance, it looked like pure chaos. But due to the fact that I was doing so much at the same time and I had to wait on people calling me back and that thing, it wasn't the email time yet where you got a response in 5 minutes. This was like email nailed to a computer. So this was the pre-smartphone era. It was even the pre-BlackBerry era. And I was just different. And he didn't realize that. He gave me the book. The rest is history. Now, because it's different, doesn't mean that it's worse. In most cases, these special people have found ways to negotiate their lives quite successfully using their own different, quote unquote, different approaches. In another extreme case, this is, fast forward 20 years. Just recently, we had a tree in our garden, and we had workers. We had a tree in our garden. Yeah, we have trees in our garden, but from the neighbor's property, a tree fell down, significantly damaged 2 of our trees, so we had to take them down. And that was very sad because they were, I think, 80 to 100-year-old birches that were sitting there. And only because it's the neighbor thing, neighbor doesn't care for his part of the forest, so shit like that happens. He doesn't give a fuck. Long story short. Now, important thing was there was this dude who took down the trees. And in discussions with another company that was there simultaneously, I kind of overheard and found out that this guy is very successful in what he does. And he is, very, I don't know, how do I say, charismatic character, I would say. He was very, very, very good, very precise, very quick. And obviously, he had done it a few times. Cutting down trees seems so easy. It's not. And anyhow, I found out, I overheard in discussions, the other company that had hired him as a subcontractor, they were talking about that this dude wasn't able to read and write because he just wasn't really paying attention. Well, he wasn't paying attention. He wasn't stupid, obviously. He probably had some kind of learning disability. Anyhow, long story short, and a very funny one, this guy managed to actually run a fucking business. No idea how he did it. Never got into so much discussion. But one very interesting thing came to light, and I found that very funny. The teachers, because he was always behind in school, were always kind of putting him down, saying, hey, you're never going to be anything. You're never going to achieve anything because you can't read and write, and you have to pay attention. And yet that, the teachers' pep talks that we also so dearly love. And quite a few years later, so the same school he went to and had been put down by the teachers, was wanting to hire somebody to cut down trees. And so as a business, he'd been very successful. And he told them, I'm not going to do it. I have no interest of working for you, and politely declined the contract, reciting all of the demotivating things that his teachers had told him. Don't get me wrong. It's not a clever thing to walk the face of the earth in modern times and not being able to read and write. However, it goes to prove that you don't have to go with a crowd. You have to figure out your own way in life, and you can be quite successful in doing so. And the same goes for self-organization. If you're incapable of organizing your day, that's pretty limiting. But don't take a fucking book telling you how to do it. Getting to the point where you find a successful method for you is key. And you're not going to learn that in a book, as I mentioned. Whatever works for you, works for you. And whether you're capable of saving everything in your head and, thereby taking into consideration that your head is not open for outside input because it's limiting itself. You're limiting your hard drive space by trying to remember the task you're supposed to achieve, or you just use a digital helper or an analog helper. Whatever the fuck works for you. And this is actually quite a short episode about the bullshit of self-organization. Don't fall for it. Take into consideration the advice that's in there, but don't follow it. Look what works for you. If you figure out that methods pointed out in a book don't work for you, just toss the book. Don't get to a point where you have to burn it with gasoline in the garden because the motherfucker cost you money. That's the point I'm trying to make. In that sense, tomorrow is exercise time, I think, right? We should be there. And tomorrow we're going to go into maximizing personal productivity. And I think I have the catchphrase already said. So stay tuned for tomorrow. We're going to have a lesson 2 in maximizing personal productivity. Going to be very cool. Sleep well. If you're west of me and if you're east of me, have a good and successful day. If you have questions, feedback, comments, always write to the very best podcast in the world at gmail.com. If you have sensitive information that and you're kind of paranoid about email, write to that address and say you want my PGP key and my PGP email address, and I'll send that to you so we can converse in all confidence, bond-like. Friends, see you tomorrow for another great episode. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye.